Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today I'll be talking about and showing you guys one of the games of one of the most revolutionary chess players of the 20th century, a man who turned a seemingly serious and monotonous game of chess into a playground for his various antics and shenanigans. For those of you who don't know who Mikhail Tal is, well, today you're going to see a very interesting game. That's all I've got to say. Mikhail Tal was a Russian grandmaster who was world champion for I think 1 year when he beat his idol Mikhail Botvinnik in 1960, and he was a man of a very unconventional playstyle of chess. He did not follow the horde mentality of playing positional structural chess. Rather, he was more of a person who sacrificed his pieces. And for any of you who want to start playing positional chess, I highly recommend you not to watch any of his games, because if you're a person who enjoys more of positional and long games with less tactics and more strategy, Mikhail Tal is not that person. He's a person who plays attacking, aggressive, and as he called himself, he was a chess gambler. He was a person who would gamble his pieces, uh, and would keep his opponent under a lot of attack, immense pressure, even if he was losing. So let's just go into this game without any further delay. Now, this game was played between Mikhail Tal, who had the white pieces, and uh, Mark Pasman. I'm sorry if I pronounced the name wrong. I'm not trying to do it on purpose. This happened at the Latvian Championship in 1953, and it's a very famous game. But I thought that I should demonstrate this game to show Mikhail Tal's brilliance in a sense. So the game started off with white going e4, black replies with pawn to c5, we have knight to f3, pawn to d6, d4, c takes d4, we have knight takes d4, and now knight to f6. Uh, Completely normal till now. We have knight to c3 and pawn to a6. So black, aka Mark Pasman, has decided to go on with the Najdorf, and this was an opening which has been played by millions and millions of grandmasters all around the world. It's one of the most theoretical openings out there. Requires a lot of preparation and study for black and for white. So I'm not surprised, because this is the 1953 Latvian Championship. Najdorf was a very famous opening in those times as well. It still is. So not at all surprised by the decision by Mark Pasman. We have pawn to f4, and this is again perfectly normal move, although white does go bishop e3, bishop e2, and other variations. There's nothing wrong with f4. There was also, I think, bishop c4, which was Bobby Fischer's favorite move to play. He used to play it in almost every game. He played it against Tal himself in one of the candidate matches, but Mikhail Tal opts to go with the more unconventional pawn to f4. Here we have pawn to e5 almost immediately by Mark Pasman, or knight to f3, and now knight bd7. We have bishop to d3, simple development of the pieces, bishop to e7, black reciprocates that idea, and castle, castle. So nothing big has happened yet. Mikhail Tal and Mark Pasman are both playing very smart chess, very simple logical chess. White goes with king to h1, which, as you can see by the arrows, is just a prophylactic move to avoid any possible moves like queen b6, knight g4, knight f2 in the future. I'm not saying it'll happen, most definitely, but when white pushes, or when either of the players push their f pawn, it's always recommended to move your king to the h file, h file, in case of any of these diagonal checks and forks coming up in the future. So it's always recommended. I mean, and it doesn't hurt to play this simple move as a prophylactic one. So we have b5 by black, a3 just to stop b4 in the future, and now queen c7. So queen c7, although is not, in my opinion, one of the best moves here. I think a better move would have been bishop to b7 maybe, uh, developing the minor pieces, and then probably queen c7 in the future. But queen c7, again, there's no harm in playing this move, because maybe black was hoping to connect his rooks in the future. In the near future, go knight c5 next move, protect the pawn on e5, provide some protection, because queen c7 helps with that. So again, not a bad move by black at all. But white, Mikhail Tal is like, okay, we had some amount of pressure built up in the center. I'm just gonna go ahead and break it, and that's what he did. He took f takes e5, and now we had d takes e5 by uh, Mr. Mark, and now we had knight to h4. So the move knight to h4, again, it looks quite looks dubious at first, but again, once you see the clear idea white has to capitalize the fact that white can jump knight to f5, and also the fact that white has a semi-open file in the f file with his rook, which he can use to simply attack after rook f3, rook g3. He can bring his queen into the attack by opening the diagonal by playing knight h4, and the bishop is always open. So you see, although white isn't exactly attacking, Mikhail Tal is building up some ideas, which obviously Mark Pasman sees, and he goes knight to c5 to do two things. One thing is to open this diagonal up for the bishop, and also to some, put some attack on the e4 pawn, and just in general putting his knight on a better square. Following the principle of the least active piece and putting it to the most active square. So smart moves, smart play by both players, and we have bishop to g5, pinning, not exactly pinning, but just attacking the knight to create some double pawns on the king side. Queen d8, which is a sensible move here, and now we have knight to f5 by Mikhail Tal. Bishop takes f5, rook takes f5, just scheming again, because after bishop takes f6, the option of queen h5 opens up, knight to d5 is an outpost, and just things are falling in Tal's favor very well. But this position by no means is better for white. I'm just showing you the options and the plans that white can have. So we have knight fd7 by black, which is one of the best moves in this position. We have bishop to e7, queen to e7, and now knight d5. Oh, Mikhail Tal hopes to keep his knight here the whole game because it's a beautiful square to keep your knight. It's an outpost in the center. What more do you want from your knight? I mean, it's just a beautiful position for the knight to be in. Black goes queen to d6. He's not bothered by the knight. And now white comes queen to g4. And you slowly see a small attack being built up on the king's side. Black plays g6 for good measure. Although he cannot take the rook immediately, he'll have to go king h8 first. White goes rook a f1, seeing the fact that black cannot capture immediately. And now we have f6. The problem with going possibly king h8 immediately is you might encounter rook f6, or actually you might even encounter just a simple rook takes f7 here. My bad. And after rook takes f7, rook takes f7. So king h8 is not a problem as such for white right now. So black eliminates the f7 weakness by playing pawn to f6. White pushes the pawn to h4. He wants to start attacking on the king side. And now black goes king to h8. He's like, okay, your rook's been there long enough. Now you gotta move. So white says, okay, I will move my rook, and he moves it back to rook 5 f3. And here is the move where black seemingly is better positionally, and black Pasman goes with the move pawn to f5. Again, a wonderful move because e takes f5 leads to simple queen takes knight capture. But the problem here is, if you don't take the pawn, what do you do? Because let's say supposingly white does go queen g5. The problem with queen g5 is after f takes e4, rook takes f8, rook takes f8, rook takes f8, knight takes f8. We have a problem as it's a doubled attack on the knight and the bishop. So if white thinks of taking the pawn, he loses immediately by knight takes bishop. And if he tries to move his knight, let's say to b4, he's losing his bishop next move. So it's a double attack, and white really might just lose the game in that very instant. So if you're white, you have no other option but to capture, and that's exactly what Mikhail Tal did. And after queen takes d5, this position is obviously, you ask any person, they're gonna say it's better for black. The simple fact that black is a whole piece up. But the beauty of playing against Mikhail Tal is that you can never be too comfortable. And this is actually what Mikhail Tal used to strive for. So, as I stated earlier, Mikhail Tal used to call himself, a chess gambler. And the reason he used to say this was because Mikhail Tal would sometimes give up unnecessary sacrifices, to some point even blundering pieces. And this move rook 5 f3 and f5 is a clear indication of how sometimes Mikhail Tal would just simply blunder his pieces. But you see, although Tal had these weird and wacky moves and blunders, and they had their repercussions, and they put Tal under immense pressure. Thing is, Tal wasn't the only one getting all that pressure. Because see, chess is a psychological game. You definitely can get into your opponent's head and make them believe that you're better, although you're not. And the fact and the very thing that gave Tal an advantage was that not many people played how Tal used to play. So you were always uneasy and uncomfortable, even if you were winning. Like, let's say in this position, let's be serious, do you honestly think that Mark Pasman was sitting easily? Like, he wasn't probably relaxing at this point. He was more nervous than he probably was when he was a piece up. And that's because of how Tal used to play. That was his playstyle. His playstyle was sacrificing pieces and gaining slight initiative. Tal used to say that he wouldn't enjoy chess if he gave his opponent a piece of mind. So Tal used to strive, he used to feed off the negative or the nervous energy that his opponent used to give out. And although in his earlier years, Tal used to face that pressure as well, he realized that his opponent's probably facing more pressure because Tal's idea was that his opponent had much more to lose. The fact that he was playing with less pieces and, being a piece down just further pushed the notion that Tal had nothing to lose. If he was already losing the game, he couldn't lose further. I mean, so he could give it his all, but his opponent was winning and he had everything to save. And I just want you guys to imagine here, like, for 1 second, like, just imagine if you're a queen up and you suddenly lost. Right? It's just embarrassing. And the very thought of it, mid game, that let's say you're queen up or you're even a piece up and you end up losing at a grandmaster level, the very thought of that is enough to make you nervous and enough to make you make a mistake, especially at a grandmaster level where things like these don't happen often. And you're playing Tal. Tal's had so much success in these type of positions. So by no means do you underestimate Tal in this position. And although the engine might say it's -3, -2, it's Tal still in the game, and that's just something I wanted to point out right now. So anyways, let's just continue with the game. So now we have f takes g6, and f takes g6 is like the only move white can play here. He has no other option. He needs some sort of compensation for the piece he just lost. And black takes rook takes f3. He's expecting white to capture rook takes f3 sometime soon. And you can see black is clearly better in this position. But Mikhail Tal says, nah, 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 nah. I'm not going to take the rook. First, I'm going to give you a check on g7. And this is a very surprising move because after king to g8, black is clearly better. I mean, there's nothing you can do, and you just wasted the only opportunity you had because when the pawn was on g6, you had this threat where after you took, you could always take h7, or you could always wait for black to take on g6 and make the mistake. But by pushing g7, you've just given black that safety, the safety that he needed. So black happily goes king g8. And here is where Mikhail Tal makes just a dumbfounding move. Like, it's mind-boggling, to be honest. And many people would have scratched their heads if they saw this move live. It's more like a desperation move, and more like Mikhail Tal didn't know what to do. But Mikhail Tal went for bishop takes h7, which is very, very courageous. I mean, it's very brave because after king to h7, he went rook takes f3. And if you put on any engine right now, he would tell you that black is winning. But again, when you're playing Mikhail Tal, you don't care what the engine says, because I mean it's just facts. You're playing Mikhail Tal, you cannot go by what the engine is saying. And even in this position, I'd say Mikhail Tal is still in the game, and you just see how he converts the win. Now here, Black played knight to e4. Obviously planning to go knight to f6 next, or even queen to d1 check eventually, and White went h5. And now Black played knight d to f6, which is still perfectly fine, because even after queen to g6 check, Black had king to g8, and now we have pawn to h6. So here is where Black actually makes quite a big mistake, in my opinion, and Black goes rook to a7. Mark goes rook to a7, and here Mikhail Tal sees the opportunity that he has rook to h3, but the thing is he can't do it immediately, because rook to h3 leads to knight to f2 check, and he simply loses his rook. So Mikhail Tal plays a move that might seem stupid, but it's probably the best move out there, and that's king to h2. The idea is to go h2 next, h7 next, or maybe after rook to h3 you go h7, and you just completely annihilate him, because after knight takes h7 you have queen to e8 check, and you could possibly even go h7 right now, but that doesn't give you a win at all, because after knight to h7, queen to e8 maybe, and you have king to g7. So Mikhail Tal's looking to go king h2 first, and then rook h3, and then h7. So I mean, you can see that Black's kind of getting nervous here, and he makes another mistake, and because he goes rook to e7. Now rook to e7 is basically a way to stop h7 and then queen to e8 check, which is coming up in the future. But what Black doesn't account for is the fact that rook to h3 still works, because after knight to h7, which is the only move stopping h7, you go back rook to d3, which is an excellent rook maneuver. I mean, you've moved two rook moves consecutively, but they're beautiful moves, because after something like queen to a8, which is the only move to stop rook to d8 check, you have this brilliant move queen to e4, because after queen to e4, rook d8 check, and this is just a forced winning game for White, because after king to f7 we have g8 queen check, king to f6, rook to d6, king to f5, and by the way, this happened in the game, queen to g6, king to f4, g3, king to e3, rook to d3, and after queen takes d3, queen takes d3, Black just decided to resign in this position, because rook and knight in an endgame where White has two passed pawns does not easily compensate in any way. And just looking by the king's precarious position, is looking hella vulnerable. I don't think even I would want to continue, or even Magnus Carlsen would want to continue in this position. And that just goes to show just how dominant Mikhail Tal was. You see, up till I think move 25, 26, Black is clearly winning. I mean, you check any engine, you check any player, but the thing is, the very atmosphere that Mikhail Tal created was just mind blowing. I mean, although he had these weird moves, these weird variations, these blunders, he would still win, because he would get into his opponent's mind. The psychological attacks that he had, even if he didn't intend to have those, was just insane. And unfortunately, because in those days there were no cameras, or we could not capture it on video, we couldn't see this happening live. We could not see Tal's very brilliance live, and we still can't see it. So all we can do is just A, go through speculation, and B, through people who were actually there to watch Mikhail Tal play in his last few years. And I mean, this isn't that old. This was 1953. So we probably have some people who've lived to tell the tale of how Mikhail Tal played and his success. But the very fact that he used to play this unconventional type of chess, very different from his idol Mikhail Botvinnik and his fellow Russian comrades, brought him a lot of success in his early years and his primal years, where when he went to represent the Soviet Union at 6 European team championships, winning gold medals each and every time, and winning individual gold medals. Then in 1959, he went on to sweep Bobby Fischer in the candidates tournament to gain the right to challenge Mikhail Botvinnik, whom he beat in 1960 to become world champion for one of the shortest periods of time. And even if it was for a short time, he held the highest position in the world. And a man who was told that he had no future in chess by Romanovsky had become world champion. And unfortunately, we can't see him today because he passed away in 1992 through his chain smoking and drinking habits. But till this day, Mikhail Tal's playstyle has influenced a number of professional grandmasters and super grandmasters. I mean, many even adopting his rash playstyle. If I were to compare him to any modern day player, I'd say the closest person that reminds me of Mikhail Tal is probably Daniil Dubov, and that also mainly in blitz or rapid when Daniel makes these type of tactics, because I mean I just feel like sometimes they're blatant blunders, but Daniel has fun. I think he's the only one who's not completely immersed by the fact that chess is a strategical theoretical game. Although he does study theory, there's no denying that Daniel is a very dynamic player in general. And if you guys don't watch him, I think you should watch him. I mean, even his banter blitz is very funny. Now, with that being said, I just feel like Mikhail Tal's legacy, because of these type of players like Daniel Zubov and everybody who copies him. Although Mikhail Tal was only world champion for 1 year, I feel like Tal's legacy will always be remembered because of just his unconventional playstyle. Again and again, I'm saying this, but he I just feel he will undoubtedly come up in conversations for one of the best chess players to ever play the game. So yeah, that was the game, guys, and that was my viewpoint on Mikhail Tal. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, comment down below what you liked about the video or any recommendations, suggestions you had, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.